Water, the true essence of life itself. Yet life is nothing without spice. What if we combine the two? Boom! We've got a very spicy Mermail deck list for you today. Been grinding with this forever, and it's pretty fine-tuned. Don't think it's perfect, but it never is perfect. This deck is really strong. It can OTK with just Neptibus and a water monster in hand. We'll get to like combos and a combo segment at the end. All in all, it's a really cool deck. A lot of the time you can sort of just instant win through stuff like Neptibus and Ruling Glacier, which goes against the spirit of Trinity, but the deck's got a lot of non-interactivity, so if your opponent is interacting with you, you're probably going to lose. Notably, if you sort of just negate Megalo or Ghost Ogre or anything, you can't OTK, but if your foolish opponent hasn't seen this video, then they won't know what to stop. Getting straight into it, Neptibus, 1-card OTK. Outside of that, you can like mill your Atlanteans to like get value. Most of the time, Undyne is actually going to be doing that better, since it can also mill things like Tidal and Sinister Serpent, which can be better value. You can just recur them more often than a single pop. Undyne also gets you to Controller, and if we weren't playing Undyne as a Trinity, we'd have to play like one Controller, one Undyne, which just sounds really bad. I tested it, and drawing your Controller and then drawing your Undyne means that you've actually gone neg 2 essentially, because both of those cards are completely useless if you draw them together. 2-2 I think is really fine. That's what the TCG builds played, and Undyne itself is honestly better than Neptibus. Neptibus, like, you can only really resolve it once. We play an extra Dragoon, so you do have 4 targets, but all in all, you're probably just going to like blaze through your targets before you can resolve it a second time. Unless you can like Avarice or something, but that's not going to happen. Diva, it does search Neptibus, but most of the time you're going to be doing some other combos. We'll also get to those at the end. If you really need to, you can summon Neptibus for a pop or something, I guess. And our other normal summons include the Cristrons. These are alright. If you draw into these two, it's a 1-card synchro. As you can see, we've got a whole bunch of machine-type synchros, which can be pretty strong. Just a 1-card synchro is fine. These are also good discard fodder. I've lined it up so the top row is all of our discard fodder, apart from these two. It is all of our normal summons, sorry. And all of our bottom row is just discard fodder. These are like fine, you get a search, you get a token, it's cool. Most of the time you're going to be using Rion to recur your like banished stuff with Tidal. It puts it back in the graveyard, which is quite cool. And Citri is just like a easy synchro from something in your graveyard. Gone into Undyne already. Lind, really good first hand set. If you're playing against this deck, and they mysteriously set a monster, it's probably going to be Lind. So you want to like Unicore it or something. Only really here for Abyss Theorem because like we're playing a bunch of Mermails. Pike searches Undyne 99% of the time. Can also search, don't know how to pronounce it, Narai? Not really sure. You can search this one, which is kind of like a hand trap. I'll get into that when I get into the hand traps. Turge, we can just recycle stuff. All in all, these cards are like fine, but I'd rather not play them. I'd rather not play most of the cards in this deck, but somehow they all mesh together to make it work. Turge is really good with Gund, which I'm not actually playing. Gund Turge loops over the Patrick Hoban success of Mermail back in the day. It wasn't really consistent enough when you only have 1 Turge and 1 Gund, and Gund by itself couldn't really summon anything else, so it's not really worth it. Turge is fine, like recurring resources that you only have 1 copy of, which is pretty important in the singleton format. Controller, I am actually going to discuss. He's a master of all powers and elements. He's one of the few Gen X monsters that can communicate with its companions. Hasn't really got many companions in this deck, only 3, but this card's actually pretty solid. The fact that it's a normal tuner is very relevant. The fact that you can search it is, you actually want to search it in a lot of cases. It makes most of the synchros in our extra deck. It's just really strong. Being a normal monster lets us put in extra damage if we're sort of going towards summon limit. If you play with this deck a lot, you'll see it like come into effect quite often. Being a searchable thing that we can use with Tidal to make Leo has won many a game by itself. Card is actually very good. I've gone into the Cristrons already. Serpent is very good at value. Even after the erratum, it's still a very solid value card. We mill it with Undyne fairly often. If there's nothing good to pop, and you don't really like need to search anything, milling a Serpent and going into the grind game is like fine. It's free fodder for Pike, Turge, any of your like Mermail monsters is actually really solid. I was playing Tribe Infecting Virus. I took it out because it doesn't really do too much, but you could definitely play it. Abyss Soldier is also fine, just for like other Serpent discard outlets. Infantry, Marksmen, and Dragoons, already got into these really. These are just free pops. The search is a bunch of stuff. We'll get into that in the combo section. Lapis Dragon is a new card, which is kind of cool. Again, I'll get into this in the combo section, but I'll read it for you quickly. If it's added from your deck to your hand, by any means, if you draw it for your turn, you can still summon it. You can summon it. And if it's added from your graveyard, from your hand, pretty much only with salvage, you can also summon it. You can also do that with Mr. Boy. 2600 wall is pretty good, but in general, it's got a lot of combo utility, especially because it's a tuner monster, which lets you do some cool things. Tidal, this is how we win the grind game. Towards the end of games, like, if you didn't manage to pull off an OTK, and your opponent didn't manage to beat you after that, just summoning Tidal every turn can just win you the game. It's 2600, you can sync it up with one of your many level 3 tuners into a Leo, you can make rank 7s, because we're playing a whole bunch of those. Even the mill effect is actually like quite good. There's one combo that uses that. With Teus, you can make pretty easy level 7, rank 7 Xyz. Teus otherwise doesn't really do too much. Like, a common first turn play you might do is summon Teus, discard into something, summon Pike, search Undyne. The next turn you have your Undyne to do really cool stuff with. Outside of that, it doesn't really do much. Like, it's kind of just rank 7 fodder. 2400 isn't too big. There are a lot of like 2500 threats around there that can kill it. Megalo, very skillful card, you prod them twice and then somehow they lose. Big Shark Boy. Mooling Glacier is an extremely unfun card to play against, but there's a combo that makes it, so you've got to throw it in here because it's quite strong. Losing your battle phase is quite relevant though, so be wary of when you actually do summon it. True King Brestos I'm going to explain quickly because a lot of people just don't understand how it works. So if it's in your hand, you can destroy 2 monsters you control or in your hand, including water, and if you do, summon it. When you summon it, you banish 2 spells or traps your opponent controls are in their graveyard. Notice how I've held this card in my hand the entire time, because all of that is one effect. It doesn't activate when it gets summoned. If they can't stop the summon, they can't stop the banish, and it doesn't target either, which makes it quite good. Notably, Mana Dragons or Initron will still get to set a card and summon itself, but otherwise this is a really good way to pave back row, just destroy, get in for an OTK, it's pretty solid. 1 for 1, pretty much only just summons Neptibus. Pots are fine for just recycling, we quite like recycling in this deck. Instant Fusion gets Nodin, which you can then make one of your 4 tuners with, or 5 level 3 tuners with even, to make a level 7 Synchro. You can also make Dragoons to then make 101, which when you detach you still get to search for a Sea Serpent, which is pretty cool. Premature Burial, just a very solid card, bring back lots of things. Almost wanted to play like Call of the Haunted here, but we're playing Gauze, so it's a bit bad. Revival's just fine, especially when we've got some big beefy boys. DDR is kind of like Recursion, you can combo it with Tidal to bring back stuff for like a rank 7 play. It's pretty good in testing, it's been alright. I was going to cut this for the spell one, but I think the trap one's better. Pretty much only just used for the OTK, but negating a trap is pretty solid in a format where a lot of people are playing traps, even in the current meta game. There's a lot of traps going around, so just negating one for free is quite good. Mind Control steals a thing. Twin Twisters, again, just like getting in for OTKs, that's kind of a theme going on here. Gauze is really solid, no one ever sees Gauze coming. But we don't play any real trap cards. Just make sure not to like bluff your Mind Control or something, because then you won't be able to Gauze if you draw it. This card's really strong, so it's quite new. You discard it and destroy a water monster in your hand or field to have a monster you control gain a bunch of attack equal to the amount of the destroyed monster. It's worked out pretty well, so 2000 defense, and if it's sent from the field to the graveyard, you draw and then discard a card. All of this sort of worked in weird ways. So 2000 defense means that you can pretty easily just set it if you need to, and it's not going to die, maybe. It's worked out for me a few times. Even if it dies, you do get to draw and discard, so you can get quicker through your deck. Reviving it helps quite a lot. I've quite often used it as a backup sphere target, because you still get the effect in the graveyard. The drawing and discarding helps you blaze through your deck, so if you really need to find something, it can help you find it. But if you're winning the game and you need to win more, it also helps you, because it's kind of like a weird honest. Notably, it will also trigger Lind, because she triggers on destruction. There's nothing else that like combos with it, I can't really think. But you can get in Tidal, which ups it your Megalo by 2600 attack, and when you're attacking twice, that's 10,000 damage. So yeah, I definitely think Nuri is very, very strong. Hand traps are just good in general. Sphere's a backup target for Megalo, otherwise I might not play it, it's alright. Scolding, I was convinced by Punk Rock Lee to play this in pretty much every deck that can play it. If you can negate one of your opponent's plays, it's a big tempo swing to steal a turn from all the cool kids. Not really sure what a tempo swing is, but if you stop what they're doing and then you win on the next turn, that's quite good. Life points don't really matter in an OTK deck. And these are our trinities, I've already discussed them. Second Goons is only really there for like a specific combo, but like another backup search is always fine, I guess. And Undyne, because 2 controller, 2 Undyne is 100% the way to go. Phoenix, it's the only link we play, it's alright, it kills back row. Don't play Unicorn or Cerberus, I've never needed to resolve them, I never wanted to play them in this deck, so they got cut pretty early on. Mistar Boy, if you've got 2 dead water monsters on board, making this is fine. Turns 2 shitty things into a less shitty thing, you can add back a monster when it dies. It's fine, I guess. 1900 is bigger than like Pike and Turge on board or something, I guess. Lenfarincus, only used for one specific combo, but it's an important combo, so we do play it. These two, you don't go into rank 7s often, but when you do, you need either Big Eye or Dracosac, and you definitely need to make them, and they will help you win the game. This is just the defensive one, this is the like steal your beach. This is just the defensive one, this is just the more offensive one. They're just really strong, so they take up a lot of space, but when you can summon them, they'll usually help you win the game for sure. 101, I've gone into it because of like Goons. You could cut this for Exciton, or like I'm siding Tornado Dragon, could maybe just swap them out, not really sure. Never gone into Nightmare Shark either, but in theory having another just a rank 3 to make with like Marksman and trigger its effect is fine. You could probably cut this for something else, but I'm keeping it in there because some games where I didn't have it, I wish I did have it. Leo, make it with controller and level 7. This is really difficult to out, it's a very strong card. White Aura Whale is pretty good, there's one combo that does make it, just keeps summoning itself back from a grave. I would also play the level 6 White Aura, Dolphin I think, but I cut it for like better cards. Never really went into it, but it's fine. Samurai Destroyer is the machine level 7, so you have to play it for your Christrons. Yazi is really strong by itself, can pop anything, can't be targeted, it's like a mini Leo I guess. But what's really relevant is if it's destroyed by Backlord card effect, you can summon a worm from your deck. And we play True King Barestos as a worm, so that's kind of cool. Black Rose gone into this a lot. Like once a match maybe. Just Black Rose is really strong. If you make it with controller, that's a vanilla monster. So it doesn't count towards the summon limit, and then you can summon like Tidal, and then attack for 2600, it's pretty good. Black Rose is really solid. High Speed Droid Kendama keeps summoning itself back from the grave if we control no cards, which we probably don't. Just 2200 keeps coming back, it's really good. My opponent had to like DD Crow this or something, which is saying something, because there are not many things you'd want to DD Crow that are like better than some of the other cards in this deck. It's essentially Tidal in that sense, because it keeps coming back, but I don't know, this card's really strong. Catastor, wanted to play Armades over this, but this is a machine, so you can make it with Christrons. It's fine. Sadly, most decks are Dark type, so battling a non-Dark monster is quite relevant. But it's like fine, I guess, if you have to. Overall, the deck is pretty solid, I think. There are a few things I might want to change, like Nightmare Shark, but if you're learning the deck, the most important thing to learn is combos, which we'll get into now. Starting things off with a 1-card OTK, because that's what you came here for, probably. Neptibus effect. Send a Atlantean Dragoons from your deck to the graveyard, and then you can add any other Atlantean from your deck to your hand. Specifically, you add whatever outs what they have. You want to go second with this deck most of the time, so if they made like a monster first turn, you can add heavy infantry. If they've just got some back row, you can add Marksman. Also make sure OTK even easier to pull off, because if they've got like Mirror Force, you can just pop their Mirror Force. Dragoon's effect will kick in, we add a Megalo. And to actually do this OTK, you need to have another water monster in hand. Doesn't matter what it is, just anything to discard for Megalo. Luckily for us, most of our deck is water monsters. So we'll activate Megalo effect, discard 2 things, and then we'll summon it. Ruling time! Megalo's effect is optional, and Atlantean Marksman's effect is mandatory. This means that Marksman effect will have to be Chainlink 1. If you discarded another Atlantean, you can stack Atlanteans in either way, but they have to go before the Megalo. This means your opponent always has an option to use Ghost Ogre and Megalo. Dear opponent, if you don't want to get OTK'd, always Ghost Ogre the Megalo. Megalo's effect is Chainlink 2, so it resolves first. We get our like little equip dude, and then Marksman effect will pop their back row or whatever. Activate it, this guy goes up to 3200. We'll then use his effect to attack twice, tributing whatever, getting back Dragoons. We can then attack for 32, 32, 18, which I believe is 8200. Another one card combo you might do quite a lot if you open Undyne and you're going first, or even second and you've got nothing else, is to summon it, and then we send Dragoons to the graveyard, if I can find Dragoons, and then we add Controller, because you have to add Controller. Another ruling thing here, Undyne sends as cost. If your opponent tries to break through skill your Undyne, you won't add Controller to your hand, because that's the effect, but you will still send a water monster to the graveyard, because it's the cost. Dragoons' effect will kick in, and we will add the new card to our hand, Lapis Dragon. Lapis Dragon has been added from our deck to the hand, so we get to summon it. Another point on Lapis Dragon here, if this card is added from your deck to your hand, if you draw it, you do get to, like, you have added it from your deck to your hand, so you can still special summon it, which is kind of cool. It's kind of like Infernity Archfiend, I guess. We can now Synchro, because Lapis Dragon is a level 5 tuner, and make our White Aura dude. This guy, if we're going second, we nuke all their attack position monsters, and then it can attack twice, and I think it pierces, yeah. Even going first, I would recommend putting it in defense so they don't like 101 it or something. You can maybe keep it in attack depending on their deck. But in general, if it's destroyed by any means, we can banish a water monster from a graveyard to summon it. And as you can see, we've just sent 3 to the graveyard, so you can resummon it 3 times if it dies, which is pretty good. This next combo rarely comes up because it involves Dragoons and Tidal, both of which you'll very rarely be drawing. You're probably just going to mill them most of the time. But it's really powerful, so if you see it, you have to recognize it. We'll activate Tidal's in-hand effect, send it and Dragoons to the graveyard, to send a monster from our deck to the graveyard. The little-known Tidal effect. We will send a non-water monster. You don't want to send Controller, because it will make your Undynes less good. Normally I just send like Gauze or maybe a Ghost Ogre. But now we get Dragoons' effect, because it was sent to the graveyard to activate a water monster's ability. We will add Deep Sea Diva, if I can find it, and then we get to use Diva's effect on normal summon, which will summon Neptibus from the deck. Neptibus' effect will go off, which lets us send our second copy of Dragoons. This is one of the reasons we play 2 Dragoons, really. To add any Atlantean you want, just add like Marksman, I guess, and then Dragoons' effect triggers, which lets us add any Sea Serpent, so we'll add Mooling Glacier. Now, we've gone for 2 summons so far. So for our third summon, we'll make Lanthorincus. This is pretty much the only reason you play Lanthorincus. I haven't summoned it outside of this combo. If you look at the graveyard, what do you know? 5 Warders. Slam down this motherfucker, and then your opponent will cry. Or they'll laugh. A lot of my opponents have been playing Dark World recently, and triggering Mooling Glacier against Dark World is a sight to behold. You pretty much always lose. Cristrons also make quite a nice turn 1 play. These are quite obvious. You can summon it, and then use the effect to destroy itself, to summon Citri from the deck. You probably want to summon it in defense position. And then on our opponent's turn, in a pinch, we can use Citri and Rosenix, or whichever one you wanted, to make High Speed Roid Kendama or Catastor, depending on which one you tributed to summon the Citri. Those are pretty much all the main combos of the deck. Everything else you kind of just have to learn from playing. There are loads of like really weird interactions that only come up if you like recognize them, but those are the only main obscure combos that you wouldn't sort of learn just through playing. Deck is very skillful to play outside of doing dumb stuff. Outside of the just linear combos that I mentioned, it's pretty difficult to actually get a win unless you know what your opponent's doing and you know sort of like, at this point they need to get title to grind or whatever. Generally, I just suggest playing the deck a lot. You'll get used to sort of like the fair part of the deck. The unfair part isn't like especially good, but you're gonna win sort of like once every 2 matches just from like the odd OTK, maybe even like once a match. And if your opponent's unprepared or they don't know when to like Ghost Ogre or whatever, you can definitely sort of just like trounce them. Overall, I think it's a really fun deck to play. I'd suggest playing it if you like crazy combo decks, or if you like water stuff in general. It's pretty cool. Till next time, stay groovy. Oh fuck.